Hey guys, I'm Nate. Welcome back to the channel. So it has been quite a saga this past couple of weeks because I decided to replace the supercharger. So for those of you that saw my earlier videos, the supercharger bearings were making that whining noise and it was time to finally get them replaced. I don't know if you can hear it now. I'll do an under hood video in a little bit, just to kind of go through all the stuff that I had to do to swap the supercharger out and why I swapped the supercharger out. There's no more whining bearing noise. So this supercharger is from a 2018 Plus. I think it's from a TRX. The swap was a journey, to say the least, but I'm just glad it's finally done and I can just have some peace of mind. Why did I get a new supercharger? So if you saw my earlier video about the supercharger going on, you probably saw that one of the things I had mentioned in that was, okay, there's a few options you have. I could get a new supercharger, I could get a refurbished supercharger, use one, or I could just swap the bearings out. And I was leaning towards swapping the bearings out. So I had found this site, John Bond. A lot of y'all in the comments said go with Jokerz. Thank you for those comments. So I decided to try Jokerz out. So I was ready to do it. I knew I'm gonna have to take the supercharger out. That's honestly why I was probably stalling on that a little bit, just knowing that I'm gonna have to take the supercharger out. Finally decided to call Jokerz and kind of find out what the process was. And I'm glad I did, because in talking to Jokerz, they actually talked me out of doing the race rebuild. So my plan was send it to Jokerz, have them do the race rebuild, change the bearings out, go with upmarket rated bearings, ceramic bearings, so then if I wanted to spin the supercharger higher, I could, but also I could get rid of the bearing noise. And basically what he told me was, look, you could do that, happy to take your money, but he doesn't actually think it's a bearing issue. He thinks it was a casting issue on the early models superchargers like mine that they fixed in late 2017. So his recommendation was, don't do that. If you still want to do a race rebuild later, send them a good supercharger, but instead, for now, go ahead and just buy a 2018 Plus supercharger. And so that's what I started shopping around for. There's a guy on eBay. I can put his eBay handle on the description so you know where to get it from. But that's basically what they specialize in. Now, I think these are Hennessy takeoffs, A, from stuff I read on the forums, plus B, when I saw the shipping address that it came from, it was the same address as Hennessy Performance. So I think, look, dude rolls in, wants to get the HP 1000 package. Well, you got to do something with the old supercharger, right? So I think what they do is, instead of just throwing it away or selling it to scrap, plenty of 2015, 16, maybe even some 17 owners that need a new supercharger. Hey, why not? That's what I did. So pulled the trigger, got the supercharger from him. It was delivered. We went ahead. My buddy came over because the supercharger weighs just over 100 pounds. And so one thing you got to be concerned with is you're leaning over the engine bay. Now you can pick it up on your own, but when you're taking it out of the engine bay, you're leaning over the car. It's not very comfortable position. You don't want to scratch the paint, none of that stuff. I mean, I had the fender covers, towels, all of that stuff, just to be careful about that. And so what I decided was, look, we both pick it up from either side, we can take it out. So we did that, took out the old one. Now the replacement supercharger, they had taken off the bypass valve, the sensors, the throttle body, all of that. So you got to swap all of that back on. We get to installing this thing, and what we find out is that the supercharger assembly, the lower assembly, not the lid, so the stuff from the bottom, has 2 bolt holes on each side. That's where the fuel rails mount to. We go ahead, put this thing back in. I got new gaskets, all of that good stuff. Swap this thing in, falls in perfectly. There's a couple of alignment dowels on the passenger side of the supercharger and make it really easy to drop in. What we find out is there's a bolt. It looks like when they were taking it off, the dude that had the torque wrench probably put it in the wrong setting and drove in that bolt, and it was probably bottomed out because it was just stuck in there. There was no way I was going to get that thing out. And so we tried everything. We tried screw extractor, everything, nothing. Finally, we called it. I was about to go to a machine shop and see if they take it out, or try propane torch, something like that. The guy, I contacted the guy and I told him, look, I'm probably going to need a replacement. Super gracious about it. They went ahead, shipped a replacement out. took the old one back, said, look, don't mess with it anymore. And I ended up getting the replacement back in just this past week. So buddy came over again, swapped all the parts on, put the new supercharger in, and that's where we are. Now you can hear it's quiet, super quiet driving around. Don't have that dreaded bearing whine anymore. And if I step on it, which you'll see in a little bit, I still got that supercharger whine. So that was the saga. So finally, car was out of action for about a couple of weeks. The picture that you'll see in the thumbnail is from when the car was just sitting there waiting for its new supercharger. So I covered the intake holes. I don't want any lizards or anything getting in there, being down here in Florida. Let me just make sure my coolant temps look good. Yep, oil temps, everything. It looks pretty solid here. Yep, everything looks good. That's the whine that you come to expect. I forgot the shift. That's how excited I am to have this car back on the road. Just doing some runs here around the block just to make sure that everything's good, the hoses aren't gonna pop off. So stay tuned. Next week, I signed up for an autocross. Yeah, some of y'all might be like, autocross in a Hellcat. It's probably gonna be I don't think they've had Chargers, Hellcats, these LX bodies at this autocross. But I figured, you know what, it could be fun, why not? I'm not exactly going out there to set any records, but it should be something fun to do. Take this car out, see what it can do. I did autocross a manual Hellcat at Radford now, on the ramp back then, and that was a lot of fun. That was their car, of course, so I wasn't beating up my car. So I'm gonna definitely take the camera out there and post that up. So stay tuned for that. But I wanted to get this car ready for that, make sure it's good. Driving it a few times this week to make sure nothing pops off. That's the last thing I'd want during an autocross event. But here, listen to this whine. To me, the car feels stronger too. But again, that could be my butt dyno needing to be recalibrated, because I've been rolling around in a Hyundai Santa Fe for the past couple of weeks. So it is very possible that that has nothing to do with the new supercharger. Just keep an eye on my intercooler coolant temps. I had to burp that a couple of times, so you are going to lose a little bit of coolant when you do this job. So just keep an eye that you're going to get some air in the system. We just burped it the cheap way, which is just let some coolant run, open the reservoir, let some air come out. Official factory is you're supposed to use some kind of vacuum pump. I don't have any of that stuff, so hopefully we'll just keep an eye on the coolant temps and make sure those are all good. I lost a bit of engine coolant last night when I was snugging up the hose on the upper. It's not the radiator one, it's the one to the other side. This was a late 2015 build, so it doesn't have the problem with the first year where you had to put a second hose clamp on it. Now, the other thing I did do is, that's a pro tip for you guys, I did call SRT to see if they would do a Goodwill supercharger replacement for me. Now, they told me it's possible, but you got to be within 2 years of the warranty, and I was within 3. So if I'd called them earlier, I might have been able to get at least maybe some portion of it covered. So that's just something to keep in mind, guys, that if you do have the supercharger bearing problem, you might be able to get it covered, but act quickly and call SRT. All right, so let's go under the hood. I'll show you what we did. What we did here, so this is a new supercharger. Yeah, it's a little scuffed up here. I'm kind of bummed about that. I was thinking about reusing my lid because honestly I think it was in better condition, but I figure the gaskets are going to be better sealed on this, so why mess with it? Now, to take this off, you take the valve covers off, you're going to have to take off the cowl out there, the brace that's under here. You're going to have to take off this ECU cover there, the wipers are going to have to come out. That'll give you the clearance you need to remove these bolts. There's 10 of them. There's a sequence to do this in the manual. The engine cover's got to come out, the fuel rail's got to get bolted off, and those coolant hoses that go into the back of the coolant crossover on the supercharger, those also are going to need to come out. Now, pro tip on that, if you use some hose pliers, you can just basically clamp them down so you don't lose too much coolant. That'll just save you a ton of work at the end. The supercharger I got was off a TRX, so I did have to change the coolant crossover pipes in the back. That was a pretty easy job, just 4 bolts, but just keep in mind you guys do have to do something like that. I had to get the catch can out of the way, the serpentine belt, and the supercharger belt had to come out. I put the old serpentine belt on, but I did take advantage of this to get a new supercharger belt. That's a Gates green belt, heavy duty, why not, cheap insurance. And this is my coolant hose, the one I was mentioning. That was a little farther on. It's been like way since the factory. I just snugged it up. The intake, obviously, that also has to come out to get the supercharger out. It's 103 pounds, 2 people to take it out, and then the bypass valve, all the sensors, and the throttle body you're gonna have to swap onto the new one. That's again if you're buying a refurbished. I don't know if the brand new ones come with those assemblies. Then just topped off the coolant, burped it like I said, that was off to go. All right, just checking on my gauges, make sure everything's good. Now, one thing weird that did happen is I had the battery disconnected obviously for like a couple of weeks. And when I come back in here to the SRT pages, I get this weird error message, no active subscription. I'm freaking out thinking Dodge took away our subscription to performance pages. Apparently this is a bug. There's a reset procedure. I'm gonna go ahead and try and follow that to get this thing reset so I get my performance pages back. You saw my earlier videos. I don't really use it all the time, mainly because it's slow to start. But right now, where I have all this new stuff running, I just, you know, the new supercharger, new belt, topped off the coolant, all of that stuff. I just really wanted to keep an eye on everything together. Coolant temps, intercooler coolant temps, oil temps, everything. So it would be nice to have all the gauges on one screen. So I do want to get that fixed so I can just keep an eye on that the next couple of days, make sure everything's humming okay on this car. All right, guys, well, that's really it. Hope you enjoyed this one. Check out these next ones next, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.